Good morning, everyone, and welcome along to the GT European Series powered by Pirelli. It's the first track action of the morning here at Spa-Francorchamps for the weekend of the 24 hours. And it's Spa weather once again, I'm afraid, because we've had rain overnight and it's a rather soggy looking Spa for today's qualifying session, which has actually just begun. The clock already ticking for this first part of the session. 2 sessions in qualifying, as we have with all of our main SRO series, for those with 2 drivers, and we have pretty much all of our grid with 2 drivers this weekend. They share Q1 and Q2, and the grid in Q1 sets the grid for race 1, which happens today, and qualifying for Q2 sets the grid for race 2. Very, very tricky conditions in cars which are highly powerful, not a huge amount of aerodynamics, and it's going to be a real challenge for our drivers out on circuit. My name is Ben Coston-Duras. I've got Joe Osborne alongside me for commentary for qualifying. And Joe, it is one of those days for sitting in a commentary box, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually not jealous of these guys right now as they're on their outlap, just trying to find the grip and where they can run the rubber. That KTM going very slow on the way to Puan. I don't know if it looks slightly lower on its left side or that was just a trickery of the camera angle there, but we'll keep an eye that KTM gets back up to speed. But yeah, all of these cars don't use tyre ovens, so the tyres will be cold. Not so much of a negative with a wet tyre, and this new Pirelli wet tyre that got released for this season across GT2, GT3 and GT4 is really getting the plaudits of the drivers, and we're hearing in GT3 almost 4 seconds a lap faster than the old Pirelli wet tyre that it replaced from last year.
We have a massive grid of 75 GT3 cars for the headline 24-hour race, which kicks off tomorrow afternoon, supported by GT4 and GT2, which we have in front of us now. Joe, in terms of the differences between GT3 and GT2, sort of logic suggests that GT2 would be a lot faster, but one thing they are is quite powerful.
Yeah, so the GT2 to versus GT3 really is on horsepower than GT4, even less horsepower again. And what SRO have done here with GT2 is effectively created a new category. GT3, we know how popular it is across the globe since its inception. But with its popularity, the manufacturers have got greedy in some regards, and the pace gets quicker and quicker, and that drives up costs. There's more energy through the car. So GT2's almost, in my opinion, back to what GT3 was as an original concept. They're fast road cars with some aerodynamical aids and some safety features, like the roll cage, for example, and a fuel cell. But they're a bit more akin to their road car cousins. And you can kind of see that, especially with the Mercedes. This KTM is a road-going car, but a bit of a quirky one. Obviously a carbon fibre chassis, and how the roof door mechanism, I don't really know what you want to call it, but how the driver gets in and out is a strange way anyway.
Yeah, based primarily on road cars rather than a GT3 car built from the ground up as a race car. They share the same chassis as their road-going counterparts, and so this is very similar to a Lamborghini that you can have on the road. As you say, the KTM is a little bit of an anomaly because I don't think I've ever seen one of those on the road. It does have underneath all of its skin the original KTM crossbow, but the axles have got wider, then there's a roof on top, then there's a rear wing as well. And whilst I have seen the original KTM as a road car, one of these GT2s I have not. They are very popular cars though to race, and we've got 2 of them on our entry lists, one of which is going very slowly, I'm afraid. Which of these is it? We've got 89. I think this is the 89 of Matto Homola and David Kajaya sharing that car, and round it goes. Okay, so it's had a spin and now it's just trying to restart.
Yeah, I might just need a Control-Alt-Delete. When a race car goes backwards, it confuses the wheel speed sensor. Sometimes can just shut the car down, and I think that's what we're seeing there. As the rain's pouring down, isn't it? Bouncing off the tarmac there, headlights off. So hopefully we can just get that car power cycle turned off and back on and get going. I'm sure the race director is going to give us another 45 seconds to a minute before we have to potentially look at stopping this session.
That's David Kajaya, who is new into that car. Lisa Kryhammer was aboard that car in Zandvoort, which was the last round of their championship. Paul Ricard started the season at Zandvoort, what was that, about 6 weeks ago, their second round, and they will move on from here to the second half of the year in Misano, Valencia, and finish the year in Barcelona. Krajhammer aboard the 89 that she was sharing with Matto Homola, and it's now David Kjaya, who's come across basically from touring cars, best known for the TCR International Series and racing in the European Touring Car Championship, then kind of went back into more national racing after COVID, has shown up in the Ferrari Challenge paddock this last year, but this is his first time, probably his first time in that KTM, so the reset procedure versus a TCR Seat is going to be very different.
Yeah, and the worst part for him is at the furthest point from the pit, so the radio communication's always pretty weak around that Lecom area, so he might be having to do it solo and just going through it logically, trying to find the master switch, turn all the power off, then recycle it, and then go through the whole procedure. Getting our first flyers in at the moment, and it's Oliver Framuth on a 2:38.8, 6/10 clear of Formanek, both Lamborghinis at the top of the times.
Watch out, of course, for the usual track limit issues, especially in wet conditions when perhaps you're not running the same racing lines that you would do in dry conditions. Can it be even easier just to slither off the circuit? As soon as you're off the circuit, four wheels off, the lap time gets deleted, even if you might not have gained an advantage. So, for instance, we've already lost Pascal Gibon's first lap. Good to see that that 53 car is on our starting list this morning, because it wasn't in pre-qualifying yesterday. The car, the Akodus ASP car that he shares with Christophe Boré. And he had done a lap time, but it was deleted for track limits at turn 4, and turn 4 is the top of Radion.
Yeah, our hot spot, as we see Formanek is purple in sector 1. That includes that Eau Rouge corner in that sector. Coming down the hill into Piff Paff, still braking on the racing line. It's hard as a driver. Sometimes you go off the racing line's slippier in the wet. Why? Because it's used more. The surface is less coarse. There's oil and rubber deposited on that, and the water doesn't mix well with that. But it's ultimately the best way round a corner. So it's a trade-off of overall grip versus taking angle out through sector 2 here. What can Formanek do? A lot of spray coming up. It's another purple sector. This is looking like a good lap at the moment. He's probably on for a 2:35 or so. Oliver Framuth is in front of him on the track. It's about a second slower on this lap, so the pace is getting quicker. And we've touched on Oliver Framuth as we see that 89 car coming in, looking inside the engine bay. 2.5 litre 5-cylinder Audi engine in the back of that KTM, so a fairly robust, reliable motor in the back of that Austrian car.
Bronick Formanek then, our leader in Pro-Am, that he shares that car with Stefan Rossina. Rossina will be in qualifying 2 and coming towards the line. I guess this is what we're going to see, especially in qualifying 1, where we have the more amateur drivers, that they're going to take their time to build into the confidence of where they've got the grip. The tyres themselves and the temperatures should be good, but it is a case of building confidence more than anything else. Yeah,
as we look inside here, just trying to see if there's any errors on the dash. There's something saying, oh, it's ignition off, so that's fine. There's that quirky mechanism we were talking about. Mechanic saying, wait, I thought you were saying drop the car originally, but they need to get that car out with half a session nearly expired now. They want to get going and get some laps on the board.
As I say, I imagine David Kjaya could do with every single lap that he can get out there on circuit. We've already had half of our qualifying session done. Not an enormous amount of track time for anybody this weekend, because the timetable is so crammed, and the length of the circuit means you might only get 5 or 6 passes at any given corner before you have to go into the important sessions like qualifying in the race. So yes, he'll know the circuit from his time in TCR, but that was a front-wheel drive car. This is a rear-wheel drive car. They're going to handle completely differently. Yeah, another purple sector this time for this Mercedes of De Martin. I love the Mercedes, the body language of it, quite soft, so you can see the car pitch and roll, and that's exactly what you want in wet conditions. Less lateral load given to you because there is less grip, so you need the car to be softer to pitch and roll and let you manipulate that weight. You can see it diving under brake, and as it turns in, the weight then rolls over to the loaded side, and De Martin doing a good job here. He's really improved over the first 2 rounds at Ricard and Zandvoort. You see another car in the pit lane. That's the 88 Audi, isn't it? He's done 1 time, but that wouldn't be a strategy thing. So I wonder if they've got a slight issue too. The 88 Audi is the LP racing machine of Gianluca Giorgi, who rejoins the championship alongside Danielle Kaziania, and we'll see Danielle in Q2 as the pro driver in that Pro-Am entry. So Giorgi with a lap time on the board, but the slowest lap time and some 7.1 seconds off. And it's only the only lap time he's set. So we are going to see improvements, I'm sure, in this second lap and then the third lap, as potentially the circuit starts to dry a little bit thanks to the running on circuit. There isn't that much falling from the sky. And also, as we mentioned, the confidence. So Di Martino up to second position. Formanek still holding on to pole position for the moment. But Philippe Pret aboard the #1 Maserati has a purple sector to his first sector attempt. And is that his second lap? Yes, it is his second flying lap. But he goes green in sector 2. And so looking sort of equal to Formanek.
Yeah, we've seen 3 different cars do purple sector 1 there, haven't we? It was the Lamborghini, then the Mercedes, then this Maserati of Philippe Pret. Solo driver, same as Frameth. So that will be an advantage in Q2 that they already know the conditions, whereas all the other cars with the 2 driver lineups are bolting in a fresh driver once more.
Yes, but the Q2 will be the more performant of the 2 qualifyings, because those that share with pro drivers will, in theory, should be faster than these AM drivers that are single entry. So Philippe Pret and Oliver Frameth, single driver entries. And I'm sure we've got Philippe Saint-Louis on the entry list for the 24 hours. We usually do. Based out of Monaco. A nice little 4-wheel drift there from Bronick Formanek coming through now Speaker's Corner, or Jackie X Corner. It was just on the exit of Brussels where all 4 wheels were going laterally rather than forward. Not necessarily the fastest way, but sometimes you need to. And it's weird, Joe, we talk about this, the wet racing line, the karting racing line, but more and more I notice that actually doesn't seem to apply any longer.
No, I think with surfaces getting changed more often at these F1 circuits, you used to get different patches of circuits, and now the Formula One sort of stipulate the surface has to be of X quality. So they just resurface so often, it's harder to go and find a difference out there and really work it as a driver. Of course, that will change as it gets wetter potentially, because you're trying to avoid standing water and stuff like that. But yeah, it really seems the main difference the cars are doing is just avoiding painted curbs and white lines at the moment.
We had a massive reset of the tarmac here at Spa before last year's 24-hour race. They resurfaced about 70% of the circuit, but made it 3.5 seconds faster in a GT3 car. So everyone benefited from that, including then Formula One, who came here at the end of July. And of course, that same surface now 1 year later, still offering a decent amount of grip. Formanek's going to improve his lap time. He's gone 0.2 of a second faster in sector 1, 0.4 of a second faster in sector 2. Comes across the line and goes 0.3 of a second faster and half a second clear at the moment. But we do have others setting purple sectors behind him.
Yeah, exactly that. He's catching the back of Oliver Frameth and another Lamborghini, so I think he might get compromised on this lap. Frameth 1.7 seconds slower at the moment as we go to the Maserati of Pampanini coming through Blanchimont. Having to have a small break on the way, and the cars will be approaching there at over 250 kilometers an hour. So it's a hugely fast corner, a very little runoff on the inside of the corner. You can see that big green concrete wall looming into the bus stop chicane, avoiding the curves, trying to get the best traction possible. Open the steering wheel up, lean on the traction control, let it decide how much power to give to those rear wheels and push you across the line. P4 still 36.9.
An important weekend for Pampania and Calamia, because they took victory in Zandvoort Race 2. The championship has been dominated so far by Rossina and Formanek, so them taking that 4th race win of the season gives them momentum coming into Spa here, and they would really love to continue that in that gold and black dynamic motorsport Maserati. Formanek's going to be struggling to improve his lap time on this one, because slightly perhaps being held up by Oliver Frameth here. It was still purple through sector 1, but sector 1 ends just as we picked them up. So at Les Combes, we're now in the very thick of Sector 2, going through Pouan or Double Gauche, depending on your preference. And yeah, he's still behind Frémut. So I imagine that once we get to Stavelot 2 or Curve Pour Frère, that's going to be a green or maybe not even a green.
Yeah, I think you got the advantage of the slipstream in Sector 1, hence the purple, and now he'll get the negative of the dirty air and getting held up. He's got a decision here. If he can't get past Frémut before the end of this lap, he's probably better to back off to the gap behind him, because he's also got that Mercedes of De Martin in front of that. So, yeah, with this lap gone, I would say, because of the Sector 2 compromised by half a second, he might be better versed to back off. He's got a huge gap behind, fill that gap, and then he'll still have time for 2 push laps. And it looks like that's what he's doing now, as Frémut drops it on the curb. Did well there not to loop it around.
Frémut was definitely not interested in letting him pass, was he? He was still very much focused on his lap, even if his Sector 2 was not as good as previous. And we see these sectors on our timing screens, but of course, inside the cars, they have demi-sectors, so they get almost a constant update of how fast or slow they are in comparison to either themselves or the fastest lap, depending on your preference.
Yeah, some drivers really love the delta time. I'm a huge addict of it. I want it injected into my veins. If you've got 100% vision, maybe 1% of it is looking forwards and 99% of it is looking at the delta time, which is live updates of where you are versus your fastest lap. And it's really important tool in conditions like this, where you're trial and erroring each corner. You go, right, I'll try braking earlier, I carry more speed. Nope, that was worse. I need to try braking later. That was also worse. So you're then stuck in a quandary of what's best, and you're trying to be a live data engineer on the fly while doing 280 kilometers an hour around this Spa circuit.
Petrolisa in the 789 RTR Projects KTM Crossbow. KTM Expo goes up to 3rd position, but still just shy of Philippe Pret's pole position in the AM category. They have had pole positions in Q2, both at Paul Ricard and Zandvoort in the AM Cup, but that was, I don't know actually whether that was thanks to Andre Rokosh, who is not in that car this weekend. He's sharing it with Victor Mraz this year. Here's David Kajaya then, in his first appearance in the GT2 European Series. And Kajaya at the moment, with that first attempt, only 7th position, but he's now got weirdly fresher tyres later in the session because of those issues early on. How much is that going to benefit him coming the end of this session? We're nearly 2 minutes away. Surely those wets are going to be a little bit sharper on the edges.
Yeah, it depends. The teams don't have to start with new tyres, so let's just speculate that they all did. It will help, of course, but still pretty wet, so I don't think they'll be losing the edges yet. You do see them going off the line there to keep the tyres wet. Formanek, another purple sector you can see on the graphic down low, as we see Gibbon has boxed. Maybe he feels that's the most he can get. They'd rather get that car turned around and prepped ready for Q2.
Well, don't forget that that car did not appear in pre-qualifying. He's only done 1 fast lap, sits in 8th position. So I'm wondering whether there's still issues for Acolis ASP and their Mercedes GT2, which is a real shame for Gibbon Bourret. They'll hopefully get it fixed, at least for Bourret to have an attempt at qualifying in the 2nd session coming up in a few moments' time. Formanek is going to improve once again by the looks of things if he can get the chicane right at the end of the lap, staying far away from that entrance curb. Curbs and paint is not your friend in wet conditions. Now the traction control working heavily and spitting and firing that engine out of the final turn, and he goes a second faster than his previous attempt, and a whole 1.5 seconds clear now of Philippe Pret.
Yeah, Pret has done the green sector 1 as we see Gibbon leaving, so I think you're right, there must have been an issue with that car. And let's follow the 88 here. Good to see Audi back in the series, and they have been obviously a huge supporter. 21 Pro-Am class wins since 2021 with that Audi GT2, so it's been a very strong car, and it's beautiful, isn't it? We're so used to seeing the GT3 and GT4 R8, so to have 3 different versions of R8, we're very lucky. And I love the snorkel on it, and the car just screams on its way down. You can see the spray being kicked up past the old pit wall here into Eau Rouge. Got to try and use that curb, but you don't want to load the car up on it too much, because that can cause the car to spin. Seem to carry good speed through there, which is important, because now you're flat all the way down the Camel Straight.
Sits in the middle of the road, stays away from the left-hand side, potentially a little bit wetter, breaks well offline into Lecombe, now comes across to try and open up the corner and get the best of the racing lines through Lecombe, carry the most amount of momentum possible. So tricky, and these greasy conditions giving lots of respect to the white lines and the curbs. And now breaks into Bruxelles, which has like 3 or 4 different really approaches to that corner. He goes pretty direct, turns in early and lets the car wash on the middle part of the corner. Now through Speaker's corner, stays on the racing line there, but plenty of space on the exit again. And it is a green sector 1, so he is going to improve from 8th position. Pascal Gibon did go back out onto circuit, by the way, but I think he may have missed the checkered flag. The session has finished, but we've got a lot of cars still able to improve, and with conditions improving and drivers getting more confident, I'm sure we're going to see a change to the 9-strong field qualifying in Q1 by the end.
Yeah, the Audi really breaking off the racing line there. It was almost directly on the inside, so he's obviously felt that's where the grip's at. And you can tell from the body language of the Audi, he's very confident to swing the car around as we see Formanek getting out of the way. He's obviously bailed on that last lap. Expect him to box instead of taking the checkered flag as the Audi pumps out with Stavolo 2 back to full throttle. Shifting up to 6th gear. This first little kink, even in the wet, is quite leery, but they'll be flat through here. 250, 260, slight dab on the brakes for Blanchimont. Get the car in, careful of the exit curve. And now as a driver, you're thinking, I've only got one more break to do of this 7-kilometer lap. Don't mess it up, don't mess it up. So easy to brake too late, go in deep, and then you really bleed time on exit. Looks neat and tidy thus far for the 88 car. Open the steering lock up, shortest distance, big slide over those painted surfaces. Is he going to improve his lap time from P8 as he crosses the line up to P7? Decent job, and it was a good lap. Good to follow that car for the full lap.
Lost a little bit of time on that last sector because he was on course for getting himself onto row 2, but in the end it's 7th position, Kajaya 8th, and Pascal Gibon at 9th spot. And I think that's pretty much it for those cars out on circuit. Most now have taken the checkered flag, and I'm not sure, therefore, we're going to see any improvements. Philippe Pret is going to finish this lap. He's a long, long way down, but he's getting himself as much experience out there on the Spa-Francorchamps circuit as possible. 0.7 of a second was his attempt last lap, but that was a good 5 or 6 seconds back from that.
Yeah, that last lap was strong in Sector 3. That was a purple Sector 3, sorry, and fastest in the AM class. So Formanek overall pole in Pro-Am, and then Philippe Pret in that Maserati we just saw. And Oliver Framuth here, 3rd in class at the moment, 5th place. Interesting, it's very tight, isn't it, between 5th place, Oliver Framuth, and then all the way back to 8th place, 4.5 tenths covering them there. So some pretty tight gaps across this field. And
we know, Joe, throughout GT4, GT3 and GT2, that same SRO balance of performance structure that's put in place always brings these wildly different cars onto the same pace around the circuit, and it has proven as much, despite the Mercedes being very soft and the Audi being very stiff and all these different variables. Even in wet conditions, we've got a grid that is separated basically by about 2 seconds if you take Formanek out.
You see Pampanini there getting some information over to Clamia. Got very similar crash helmets there, and it's like when you were at school and say, don't copy my homework too much, and they've just copied and pasted it, as we see Philippe Pret now on an in-lap. Interesting to see what they do tyre-wise. Do they put a new set of wets on for Q2, or would they rather the hot wets that are on the car? I think the latter option would be my personal preference, with it being just wet enough, I think, to keep these tyres fresh and not taking off the edges.
Here are the highlights then of our first qualifying session with our amateur drivers in the cars for those that are Pro-Am competitors, and certainly wet conditions when cars went out onto circuit. Definitely improved the conditions over the course of the session. David Kajaya, new in the KTM Crossbow, having a spin and ultimately needing a bit of a systems reset back in pit lane, so didn't get many laps out on circuit. Petrolisa in the other KTM Crossbow out there with Roberto Pampanini qualifying the Dynamic Motorsport Maserati. That wonderful black and gold livery. In the end, 2nd in the Pro-Am category, 3rd on the grid for race 1. But really, in control of the session from start to finish, Formanek sliding around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in greasy conditions, and in the end, 0.7 of a second faster than Philippe Pret to take pole position for race 1, which will be this afternoon's race. Now we take amateur drivers out if you are a pro-am entry, and the pros jump in. And if you are a full am entry and sharing cars, then of course your second driver comes in. And I think we are going to see a sort of a split philosophy here, Joe, because if you're an amateur driver again and having to go through that pain of getting a set of brand new wet tyres up to temperature and up to speed, maybe you just leave the old ones on. His confirmation then, 0.7 of a second separating Formanek from Pret. Another wonderful performance from the amateur driver to be on the front row of the grid. Pampanini and Lisa on row 2. Frémont and Demata on row 3. Giorgi and Kajaya with, I think, maybe problems for Pascal Gibon's Accordis ASP. Just the one flying lap and at the tail of our 9-car field. So if you're Philippe Pret and you've had 18 minutes on a set of tyres and you're doing the second session, keep the same tyre on. But if you are a pro that can deal with that sort of pain of getting a new set of wets up to speed, maybe we'll see them take new tyres?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing here, isn't it? Rossina, they're swapping the tyres on that Lamborghini and got to get it done relatively quickly. The session will start in just over 2.5 minutes. And they've got to get all the way down to the exit of the endurance pits as well. So 35 to 40 seconds away from where they're based in the upper paddock, the F1 garages. Both pit lanes linked up here for the Spa 24 hours, so making it the longest pit lane possible in the whole world of motorsport.
And we need it for 75 GT3 cars. There is not a space in a garage free for a capacity and record grid for this year's Spa 24 hours. Can't believe we've gone the whole of June with baking temperatures and Spa. I think the forecast is actually better for the weekend to run under full dry, but we've had a full dry Le Mans 24 hours, we had a full dry Nürburgring 24 hours, and it really looked like it could be a full dry at Spa 24 hours as well. Not today, though, and not yesterday. 15 degrees. I mean, it's nice. It's nice and fresh. Happy days. Some days it has been swelteringly hot up here in the north of Europe, and it's, you know, perhaps a little bit stifling. So I'm welcoming 15 degrees air temperature.
Stifle in the Eiffel. And yeah, that's what you had last weekend, right? Should have saved that one. We see drivers getting in, mechanics helping, doing the belts up, and the wheel guns buzzing away, and yep, the Lamborghini team ready to release that car as soon as they get the nod that the fast lane is open, which we've just had come up on the timing screen. So expect that car to fire up and go. Single wheel nut on these GT2 cars. It's amazing how quick the tyres come on and off from those electric guns, delivering a huge amount of torque, up to 900 Newton meters of torque to keep those wheel nuts tight, whereas a typical road car of a 5-stud, anything from 80 to 100 is enough torque on a wheel nut, so 9 times more than your standard road car. New wets on there, you can see the stickers rotating around.
You are full of interesting information.
I just need to know slightly more than you, and you think it's interesting. That's my logic.
Not a complete rush to get out on the circuit. The fast lane is open. The session actually isn't green yet, but because our GT2 cars are based in the F1 pits and they need to go down through the endurance lane before pit out at the bottom of the hill, that is why cars are already leaving, and that's your torque wrench, getting them up to that 9,000
I think you added a 0 there, but we'll go.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, we'll go with
okay.
9,000. But you can see the length and the leverage that you need to get that the torque on those wheel nuts, and they're sided as well. So it isn't lefty loosey, righty tighty. It's the other way round on the right axle. So under braking, the action of braking doesn't undo the wheel nut. So the wheel nut under braking is always tightening. So there's another interesting fact for you, Ben.
Green flag at the end of the pit lane. And perfectly timed for the Mechanic Motorsport, powered by Bagheera, of Stefan Rossina, who's going to lead the cars out onto circuit. Philippe Pret just behind him. Always like it when I was that second driver following a bettered car. Most people that I was racing were a better car, so it was really good to be able to follow and learn, especially on conditions like this, a pro driver to understand how to maximize the potential of the circuit. Although, of course, Pret has those Q1 20 minutes, whereas Stefan Rossina will be learning for the first time.
Yeah, I think you're totally right that Pret will be able to get a grandstand view of Rossina and what he's doing, and can he learn anything from that and aid his improvement over his Q1 session, which was very strong. But of course, as a racing driver, you're always looking for improvement, as we see the 88 thundering out of pit lane. Tricky pit exit here at Spa, then there's no way around it. You have to attack it on the way out, and that's going to be very critical in the race, of course, during the pit stop phase.
Conditions, I think, are better than the start of qualifying one, but it has just started to bucket down on the main straight here outside our commentary box. So I think conditions are now going to decrease. So actually, getting an early lap in now is going to be crucial, because the circuit conditions, we started to have a little bit of a, not a dry line, but a drier line. Now with this rain coming down, that's going to disappear. So getting a lap in early could be crucial in this session. And actually, everyone's taking their time to come out the pits, and perhaps rushing was a better idea. Yeah,
definitely. And I think the newer tyre again will help in a wetter condition. New tyre always better. And if this rain carries on that we're getting on the pit straight, it won't be too long until we're getting serious amount of spray as well. So the cars will want to naturally spread themselves out, so they're not getting compromised with that vision. That Mercedes looking slightly lethargic on pit exit. So if it was a problem for Gibbon, maybe that car still got an issue with Bourret behind the wheel now.
Yeah, Christophe Bourret taking that car out of pit lane. But as we said, we didn't see much of it in pre-qualifying. And really, we didn't see what we would expect of it in qualifying one. So some head scratching still going on down at Akudis ASP. At the front of the field, though, Stefan Rossina will be the first car to break the beam and start the lap. So much experience in the world of motorsport, Rossina, from GT1s and lots of Central Europe championships that he's won over his years in motorsport. Retired and then came back to join Mechanic Motorsport in this GT series. So we're going to see a very different character to some of these cars driven by pros. They aren't going to be as nervous, as shy about really working the car to get it up to temperature as his teammate looks on around this circuit. Because sometimes being more aggressive helps that temperature build up.
Yeah, massively so, and it's chicken and egg, and the time's reset from Q1 to the purple sector. Not surprising, because he's the first car through it. Actually, Philippe Pret doing a mega job there in sector one, less than half a tenth off Rossina, so he's obviously able to follow. At the moment, I'd say these wetter conditions won't be detrimental to the lap time yet. As soon as we start to get much more on the tyre, isn't getting through to the tarmac as easy, that's when we're going to start to see it. But at the moment, the surface hanging on well, it's draining off the track particularly well at the moment. So I think there's a chance here for Rossina to pump in some fast lap times at the start of this session. In the wet, you would expect to probably see a delta of 2 to 3 seconds between a pro and an am. So that would put him on a 2:31-ish if the conditions stay relatively similar.
Certainly starting to see more spray coming off that Lamborghini. Again, Rossina braking in the middle of the road, staying away from the normal, natural racing line. At the apexes on the racing line, on the slightly slipperier stuff, and on the exits, but it does seem as though a few of these guys have been told stay off the braking zones. That seems to be where the trickiness is. These cars have got ABS, have they not?
Yeah, they do, but just the big slide out of stuff load 2 there. But yeah, the brake is the highest G point, so that's the most lateral load as you put it into the tyre. So just have to be careful that it doesn't just then go straight into ABS, and it almost feels like you're braking on ice then. The pedal goes solid. If you've ever been in your road car and you thought you were going to rear end someone, you slam the brake on, that pumping pedal through the brake. That's what you're essentially getting every time you hit the brakes in the wet in one of these GT2 cars. So it's hard to modulate the brake pressure there. So then you're guessing where to brake, how much pressure to put into the pedal. Put too much in, you can overload and shock the ABS system. Rossina crosses the line. What's he going to do? A 2:35.2, so pretty similar to pole in Q1, but definitely getting wet to look at the spray. That's got to be hampering Philip Pret now.
Is that pole position time of a 2:35.253? We're early in the session, but I think conditions are going to get worse and worse through this session. It could be that it's untouchable. Pret did a really good job, didn't he, to be 0.7 of a second back from Rossina, and maybe benefiting from following in the wheel tracks. Here is the new name to GT2 European Series, Daniel Casagna, who is born and bred in Monza and a driver coach there. That's where he has been working with Gianluca Giorgi. And he is the third fastest time, 1.7 back, as Freimut, with that familiarity of the first session, comes towards the chicane. Nice and hard on the brakes. You can see the body language of the car. He is attacking, which is great to see from an AM driver. Leans on that throttle, the traction control kicks in. That's that spitting noise you can hear, and then comes over the line to go fourth fastest, 2.2 back from Rossina. But we haven't seen Calamere, we haven't seen Homola. Here is Matto Homola. This car that he was sharing with David Kajaya, that he shared with Lisa Kryhammer. Homola with loads of professional experience. He is the pro in that car. He's going to come across the line here and go fourth fastest, 2.2 back. Slots in just ahead of Oliver Freimut. Next to the line is Niels Montserrat for NM Racing. NM being Niels Montserrat, it's his team, and he goes over the line, 10 seconds back. So a slow, well, first and second sectors for Niels.
Yeah, just building it up as Boré is on a similar sort of path to Montserrat. So both Mercedes not particularly quick on their first fly. Rossina has done 2 purple sectors. Interestingly, Freimut less than a 10th slower in Q2 than his best Q1 time. Philip Pret less than 3/10 slower. So conditions looking much worse, but lap times for their first flyers very respectable from those 2 drivers during both sessions.
The last of our pro drivers, Mauro Calamere, coming towards the line now, and he was very nice and close to Rossina's time in the middle part of the lap. Slots into 4th position, 1.8 back from Rossina. And Rossina is going purple again in the first 2 sectors of the lap. So there is the possibility to improve here. Nice. We'll see plenty of sexy slow-mos across our weekend from our chicane cam. But if you've got a nice high definition on your screen this morning, you'll be able to see every little raindrop dropping off that KTM.
Amazing the amount of water it clears, isn't it? From every angle there, it was dripping litres and litres of water getting thrown up into the air. And that's why the spray is so hard to follow behind, because these cars displace so much water. The diffuser sucking it up off the ground and then chucking it high into the air. And if you're the car behind, that lands on your windscreen rather annoyingly.
Worth noting, though, that these cars don't have as much aerodynamic assistance as we would see from a GT3 car. So there is much more requirement for the grip and the mechanical grip from the car, rather than the aerodynamics pushing it to the ground or conversely sucking water up.
Yeah, the tyre doing a huge amount of work in this new Pirelli, like we said, offering lots of drivers the grip that they want, and all the drivers being positive. And a driver being very positive in Sector 1 is Philip Pret, purple there. He's 2 seconds off pole at the moment, and he's in 2nd place, but he's on a good lap at the moment and has plenty of space in front of him as well. So we'll keep an eye on him as we see Homola coming into the chicane. It was a decent Sector 1, Sector 2 slightly further off the pace, 1.2 off the ultimate fastest as he pushes to the line. Currently in 5th place, 37.4 is his best at the moment. He improves by 1.3 seconds up to P3.
but 2.1 back from Rossina, who really moved the bar on his second lap to a 2:33.9. Here comes Nils Montserrat. Again, one of our pro drivers, 4.4 back, and that keeps him in 7th position. 8th position is Christophe Bourret, but he was 15 seconds back on that first attempt. That's his first lap out of the on circuit, of course. Pret and Fremert, his two competitors in the AM category with the experience of the first session. So actually, you've either got pros out there or you've got cars with 20 minutes of experience. It's only Christophe Bourret and Victor Miraz who are the AM competitors getting up to speed in this session, and that's why there's that big gap between 7th and 8th position, and Bourret already finding, what was that, sort of 5 seconds basically on his previous best.
Yeah, we're just seeing Clamier in a Maserati go up to 2nd. He has knocked this Maserati down to 3rd, but this is looking like a strong lap from Pret. Looks like he's going to reclaim 2nd position, maybe 1.2 seconds off will be my guess. Can he push to the line? Expect this to be a low 35 as you run to the line. It takes forever as a driver. 35.3, I was a 10th out, sorry for my bad prediction.
It does seem as though even if the rain is falling, it's not affecting the circuit as much as the improvement from these drivers and the confidence in the tyre. So we are seeing times continue to tumble. Kazaniec comes over the... Oh, no, he wasn't coming over the line, was he? Around the back of the circuit. So we're still waiting for him to set another lap time. 2.5 seconds back from Rossina. Here's Fremert, who's slower in the middle sector, but only 3.5 seconds off Rossina's ultimate pace, which is pretty good, considering both Fremert is in our AM category, and Philippe Pret continues to impress. Pret with experience in the Ferrari Challenge pre-COVID, and then post-COVID came over to the GT European Series and has kind of been a stalwart, really, of this championship, with winning the AM category last year and saying he is the one to beat, very much so. This is a better lap. This is a better lap from Matto Hommela. Through the final chicane, just 0.4 of a second back at sector 2. And now comes to the line. He's 2.1 seconds back, and that's an improvement up to 2nd position for Hommela. But he may lose that position because it's a much better lap purple in the first sector for Nils Montserrat. But Montserrat's lost quite a bit of time actually in the middle sector, so he's going to improve from 7th, but it might not be a massive improvement. No, only up 1 row to 5th position and 2.3 back. But Hommela on the front row now. We saw much better pace from that KTM in Zandvoort, had it not been for Laura Krajhammer's accident, if you remember.
It's getting properly wet, but on the last lap, 6 of the 9 cars improved their lap time, so the track's still giving the opportunity to go faster. And it was a great sector 1, which we followed this Mercedes through. Is he going to do another purple sector? The cars look well balanced, obviously quick in a straight line. Visibility starting to really drop away now, and it is another purple sector 1. He is absolutely hustling it here. And then it's sector 2 where we start to lose the time. This Mercedes obviously not able to stick with the Lamborghini and the KTM and the Maserati in sector 2 as well. But that is the balance of performance. You can't have the best of every attribute a race car can afford.
Yeah, clearly it's got a lot of grunt. And I remember speaking when this car first appeared at Monza a couple of years ago. And they had to have such a high ride height enforced by the BOP because the car was just so good, and to try and balance it to the existing cars, it ended up being very high. And by being very high, then it meant that they had to set it up very soft. And even in dry conditions, you saw the car rolling so much onto that front axle in the braking zones. It is something that kind of has carried on over the last couple of years now. It must be 3 years we've had this Mercedes as part of GT Europe. And it is definitely a characteristic. Lots of grunt, lots of speed down the main straight, but then quite soft and rolly through the middle part of the lap. Spa-Francorchamps very much like that. First sector, all about power. Last sector, pretty much all about power. And the middle sector is where the time is lost and gained from the handling of the vehicle. And Montserrat, 0.7 of a second back. It's a better sector for him in sector 2. and it could well put him onto the front row if he can keep this up.
Yeah, I think that's got to be his target, is to slot between Rossina and Hommler, and that would be a mega job here from Montserrat, looking clean through the exit of Blanchimont. On the brakes now for the bus stop chicane, all of that pitch and roll. We're talking about the splitter nearly touching the floor after looking relatively lofty for a race car through the last corner. Careful of the exit curve. We saw him touch it earlier, avoids it well now, pushing to the line. Needs to be at 35.257, and he just missed out there. That is tight, less than half a tenth off second place. Less than 5 minutes remaining now as we get a replay of Montserrat getting this slide out of Stavilo 1, touching the white line just enough. It was a mixture of touching the white line and keeping the lock on to avoid the white line that created that oversteer for that Mercedes.
A little bit wide as well through that Campos corner, which forced him to the outside. Here comes Calomier through the final chicane. And this could be a much better lap. At the moment, sits in 5th position, 1.9 seconds back from Rossina. But those first 2 sectors have been good for Calomier. Comes over the line, and yes, just under a second off Rossina, who's still the class of the field. But at least it puts him on the front row for the race tomorrow. Q2 setting the grid for tomorrow's race as Hommler comes over the line. No improvement from, sorry, that was Victor Mraz in the team stable car, the 789. Hommler is in the middle part of the lap in the 8-9 in 3rd position at the moment. And actually, last of our pro drivers now is this car, Daniel Cazagna.
If he can jump Pret here, we'd have 5 different manufacturers inside the top 5, and I think he's odds on for that round. Slightly wide out of Blanchimont, you can see him drop it on the curb. Can he get ahead of Philippe Pret as he comes to the line? He cannot, so just the 4 manufacturers in the top 4 then.
And that was perhaps, well, traffic from Philippe Pret. That put him wide on the exit of Curve Paul Frere, and actually he's going to lose that lap even if there was an improvement, because he was 4 wheels off properly from the circuit. And then through Blanchimont here, he was also wide. So all of that time lost. Still got time to go again. We've got 3 minutes left of this session. And you would hope for an improvement from the Italian, who is, as I say, last of our pro cars, but perhaps more significantly, 0.6 of a second behind Philippe Pret, who is our leading AM car. Framework comes over the line, and it's all about that last sector. They're not able to improve in the final sector of the lap.
I wonder if that's the most affected by the weather rolling in. It was actually quite clever from Pret, wasn't it? Just balking the Audi there. That was the car he was trying to get in front of the Audi, as we see Rossina still pushing hard on the run down to Pouin here. A lot of energy in that car. He's obviously not super confident of his 7/10 gap to second position. It is a green sector 1, so at the moment we're on course to improve. We are seeing some green sector 3s now. Hommler just improved on his last lap, in fact, so maybe it wasn't a physical limitation, it was just a coincidental thing we were seeing there.
Rossina's pole position lap is still his 2nd attempt. He's had a few more since then that have not been improvements. Again, green in Sector 1. Now, interestingly, this Lamborghini isn't the fastest car through Sector 1. It is the Mercedes. So it's an improvement on his best, but it's not an improvement on the ultimate best. I think he has the ultimate best through Sector 2, but this is not an improvement on that. It's only a fraction behind it, though. And he does have the ultimate Sector 3 as well, Rossina. But this is where we're seeing people lose a lot of time. So is this going to be an improvement to move that bar further away from his competition with 1 minute and 20 seconds remaining? Hard on the brakes, wide, wide, wide. Misses the apex to the first part of the chicane. That means slower through the second part. That means less momentum out of the chicane. And could have that been everything thrown away? No, he still goes purple and still goes faster. I think it could be a lot more purple had he not made that error.
Yeah, it's interesting qualifying because the run out of the last chicane so short, you kind of get away with missing the first apex. You hurt your exit, but the exit's so much shorter to the line than a normal lap. So you obviously would have gained under braking and then lost on exit, but it worked out well. Here's another purple sector, this time Montserrat. He has been the king of Sector 1, hasn't he? It's this sector in Sector 2 where the car has looked slightly off. Back in 5th place at the moment, 1.4 seconds off pole to Rossina. Can he get that gap any smaller?
I mean, that was a mighty first sector. Rossina a 42.1 and Montserrat did a 41.6 1.69. So at 0.4 of a second faster in that first sector alone. Now, we haven't seen race control pop up with any messages to say that he decided that Eau Rouge was straight, possibly, but an incredibly big first sector. But then that roll of the Mercedes, that perhaps lack of feel because of the softness of the suspension, means he's 1.6 seconds back in the middle part of the lap, and the car sliding around through Blanchimont. I guess with the tarmac runoff area on the outside of Blanchimont, you have confidence to four-wheel drift through there. He goes for the conventional racing line through the chicane, but first time I've ever heard that you can kind of compromise yourself through that chicane, gain in the braking zone and not lose on the exit. Montserrat 5th position, 1.4 back.
Yeah, shame of that middle sector, because a purple one and a green sector 3. And look at the water flowing out through the sills there of that Mercedes. And again, it shows you the softness of the car, the body roll in it, the water being expelled from every orifice from that Mercedes AMG.
An improvement from the Audi then, who runs around the outside of the first part of Fagnes, and again gives the Apex a bit of respect there on the second part. Kazaya, young, probably the youngest of our drivers in GT2 European Series. Perhaps still has the karting mentality. He's got plenty of amazing world-class kart tracks around Monza as well to have grown up with. His father was also a racing driver, and he is on an improved lap. Now, if he can keep that gap for this final sector, this will put him onto the second row as Matto Hommler heads to pit lane. So Hommler, from that front row starting position, will not try and defend it. And there's no more opportunities to improve for Daniel. So around the final turn, where is this last attempt going to put him? At the moment, he is the last of our Pro-Ams, and he improves up to 4th. So row 2 then for the Audi. It's Lamborghini, KTM, Maserati, Audi. Top 4 positions. Philippe Pret to the line, and it's no improvement for him, even though a much better middle sector for the Maserati, #1 AM champion of last year, and he will have to settle for the 3rd row. Do we have many other cars on a lap? Oliver Framert's the only one who hasn't passed a checkered flag, and his first sector is a slow one. So that ends a pretty frenetic second qualifying for our GT2 European Series, with Rossina on pole ahead of Hommler.
Yeah, and Philip Pret pole again in the AM class, half a second quicker than his Q1 time. So even though the conditions deteriorated, he was able to keep up the pace. And yeah, Framuth is bailing on this lap. They're taking the checkered flag on the new F1 straight and then going straight into the endurance pit lane. Such is the tight schedule here at Spa. We can't allow them to do 7 kilometers of an in lap. We need them off the track and ready to go for our next session.
Confirmation then, Formanek with the same gap to the rest of the field as Rossina in Q2. 0.7 of a second ahead of Matto Hommler, with Calamia and Kazaya on row 2. Philippe Pret, the sole AM pole position for AM, in 5th position ahead of Montserrat, and then Ollie Fremut, Mraz and Christophe Boré rounds out our 9 competitors. And unfortunately, it is back row once again for that Iconis ASP Mercedes. Here are the highlights then of our second session of qualifying. Not a drop of water to be brought into the cockpit of these GT2 cars, and it did start to rain just as we went green for qualifying 2. Those that had been in qualifying runs, such as Ollie Framer, getting the experience of that first session and being able to be instantly fast. But there were pros in the Pro-Am category cars, and therefore they were able to set decent lap times and decent targets straight away. Philippe Pret fast initially, but as you would expect, the pro drivers getting up to speed and moving themselves to the head of the field. It was always, though, Stefan Rossina who had the fastest lap, even though he was challenged by Mauro Calamia, by Daniel Kazaya, and Matto Hommler putting his KTM on the front row of the grid to share with Stefan Rossina. 2:40 is race 1. Join us then.